The galaxy was burning and no one knew how to stop it. The Calreth Dominion had appeared 8 months ago from the dark regions beyond charted space. They came without warning, without diplomacy, and without mercy. Their ships were unlike anything the civilized galaxy had ever seen. They were alive. Massive creatures of flesh and bone, grown rather than built, that moved through space like predators hunting prey. The first world to fall was Hexar Prime. 300 defense ships had surrounded the planet, ready to protect the 2 billion people living on the surface. The Calreth sent 40 of their bioships. Within 4 hours, every defense ship was gone, not destroyed in the normal sense. Dissolved. The Calreth weapons sprayed clouds of acid that ate through metal hulls like paper. What remained of the fleet floated in space as liquid metal and organic residue. Then they took the planet. The people of Hexar Prime tried to surrender, tried to negotiate, tried everything. The Calreth never responded. They simply landed their ships on the surface and began converting the entire world into a breeding ground for more of their vessels. Within weeks, Hexar Prime was unrecognizable. The cities were gone. The people were gone. In their place grew massive organic structures that pulsed with horrible life. After Hexar Prime came Talon 4. Then, the Vest system. Then Korath, then more. Always the same pattern. The Calreth would arrive at a system and broadcast a single message in broken galactic standard. Surrender. One day. That was all. 24 hours to decide. If the world surrendered, the Calreth would take it anyway. If the world fought, the Calreth would take it anyway. Surrender only meant dying slightly slower. 73 star systems had fallen. Hundreds of billions of people were dead or transformed into something worse than dead. The Calreth fleet grew larger with each conquest, their bioships multiplying like a plague. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 47th time. The council chamber on Votia Station was designed to hold representatives from 200 different species in calm, measured debate. Today there was no calm. There was only fear. Ambassador Threll of the Votian Collective stood at the central podium, his forearms trembling as he displayed the latest intelligence data. Holographic images showed the Calreth fleet movements, projected paths, estimated casualties. The numbers were staggering. "They're not slowing down," Threll said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat galactic standard. "Every analysis shows the same conclusion. At their current rate of expansion, the Calreth will control half the galaxy within 2 years." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for evacuation of border worlds. A few suggested surrender of the entire outer rim to buy time. Fleet Marshal Cortix of the Drenix hegemony rose to his full 3-meter height. His scaled skin gleamed under the chamber lights. "We must combine our forces," he announced. "Every species, every ship. We face extinction. Political differences mean nothing if we're all dead." There were nods throughout the chamber. The Drenix were legendary warriors. If Cortix said they needed a combined fleet, they needed a combined fleet. "The Drenix hegemony offers 30,000 warships," Cortix continued. "Our best vessels. Our finest crews." The Corthan Union representative stood next. 50,000 ships from our fleets. One by one, the major powers pledged their forces. The Minaxian Empire, the Stellar Federation, the Cooperative Worlds. Within an hour, over 100,000 warships had been promised. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. At the back of the chamber, almost unnoticed, sat Ambassador Doyen of Earth. He was young for a galactic representative, barely 40 standard years. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. They were new, inexperienced. Most of the elder species still viewed them as children playing at politics. Doyen listened quietly as the great powers made their pledges. His face showed nothing. He simply took notes on his datapad and waited. "And what of Earth?" someone called out. Doyen looked up. It was Ambassador Threll, his 4 eyes focused on the human. "Can humanity contribute to the defense fleet?" The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the lone human at the back. Doyen stood slowly and walked to a speaking platform. "Earth will send what we can," he said simply. His voice was calm, measured. He gave a small bow and returned to his seat. There was a moment of silence, then scattered laughter. It wasn't cruel laughter. It was the laughter of beings under enormous stress finding a moment of absurdity. Humanity had exactly 147 warships in their entire fleet. Even if they sent every single vessel, it would be a drop in the ocean compared to the combined armada. Every contribution matters, Threll said diplomatically. We thank Earth for their support. The Council moved on to logistics. Where would they make their stand? Which system would they defend? Intelligence reports indicated the Calreth were moving toward the Velis system. Velis 7 was a heavily populated world, 6 billion people. If they lost Velis 7, the psychological impact would be devastating. We defend Velis 7, Cortex declared. We draw the line there. No further retreat. The vote was unanimous. The combined fleet would assemble at Velis 7. Every available ship, every weapon, every soldier. This would be where they stopped the Calreth advance or died trying. As the council session ended and representatives filed out, Doyen remained in his seat. He was still making notes on his datapad. Threll approached him, moving on 4 legs with practiced grace. Ambassador Doyen, Threll said gently, I know humanity wishes to help, but perhaps it would be wiser to keep your fleet in reserve, to defend Earth itself. This battle will be extremely dangerous. Doyen looked up at the Vodian. His expression was neutral, but there was something in his eyes, something that made Threll pause. We appreciate your concern, Doyen said, but when Earth makes a commitment, we follow through. We'll send what we can. How many ships? Threll asked. 1, Doyen replied. Threll's translator hesitated as if unsure it had processed the word correctly. 1 ship? That's correct. The Cadian Eternal. She'll arrive at Velis 7 in approximately 22 hours. Threll didn't know what to say. 1 ship against the Calreth Armada. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Probably both, I see, Threll said carefully. Well, every ship counts. Please send our regards to your captain. I will, Doyen said. He returned to his datapad. Threll left the chamber, shaking his head. 1 ship. The humans were either crazy or they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. He suspected it was the former. 3 hours later, the Calreth broadcast their message to Velis 7. It was the same message they always sent. Surrender. One day, the countdown had begun. The combined fleet rushed toward Velis 7, over 100,000 warships converging on a single point in space. They would arrive with hours to spare. They would dig in. They would make their stand. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a single human vessel moved toward the same destination. Its name was the Eternal. Its crew numbered 43. Its mission was classified. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. Something terrifying. The space around Velis 7 filled with ships. They came from every corner of known space, tearing holes in reality as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Drennick's battle cruisers, 3 kilometers long and bristling with plasma cannons. Corthan defense spheres, their surfaces covered in missile tubes. Minaxian carriers, each holding hundreds of fighter craft. Ship after ship after ship. Fleet Marshal Cortex watched from his flagship, the Unbreakable Dawn. The tactical display showed the growing armada. 107,000 warships, 43 different species. Every major power in the galaxy had sent their best. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It was necessary. Final count, Marshal, his tactical officer reported. The officer was young, barely past his training. His scales had barely darkened. 107,215 vessels. All systems operational. All crews at battle stations. Cortex nodded slowly. He had served in the Drennick's military for 60 years. He had fought in border wars, pirate conflicts, and political skirmishes. He had never seen anything like this. Never imagined he would need to. Defensive formations, he ordered. Set up overlapping fields of fire. I want every approach vector covered. When the Calreth arrive, they'll fly into a wall of firepower. Yes, Marshal. The fleet moved into position. It took hours. Coordinating over 100,000 ships from dozens of different species, each with their own communication protocols and tactical doctrines, was a nightmare, but somehow they managed. The fleet formed a massive sphere around Velis 7, a metal shield protecting the 6 billion souls on the planet below. A small shuttle requested permission to dock with the Unbreakable Dawn. Cortex approved it without much thought. Probably another ambassador wanting to observe the battle. They came aboard in the command center, where they could feel important while staying out of the way. The shuttle docked. 20 minutes later, a human walked onto the bridge of the Unbreakable Dawn. She was small by galactic standards. Most humans were. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. Her black hair was tied back efficiently. Her eyes took in the entire bridge in a single sweep, missing nothing. Commander Jiwan. She introduced herself, giving a slight bow. Human Defense Fleet. I've been assigned as tactical observer. Cortex studied her. He had met humans before. They were strange creatures, physically weak compared to most species, short-lived. But there was something about them, an intensity, like small predators pretending to be harmless. Welcome aboard, Commander, Cortex said, though I'm afraid there's not much to observe yet. The Calreth haven't arrived. They will, G1 said simply. She moved to an empty station at the edge of the bridge. Someone brought her a chair. She sat and connected her datapad to the ship's systems. Within minutes, she was reading tactical data as if she'd been born on a Drenix warship. Hours passed. The crews waited. Tension built. Soldiers cleaned weapons that were already clean. Officers reviewed plans that had been reviewed 100 times. The people on Velis 7 below watched the sky and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. 18 hours after the Calreth ultimatum, they arrived. Space tore open like a wound. The Calreth bioships poured through, organic vessels that seemed to swim through the vacuum. They were horrible to look at, masses of armored flesh, pulsing membranes, visible organs beneath translucent skin. They moved with disturbing grace like deep-sea creatures rising from an abyss. Contact, the tactical officer announced. His voice shook slightly. 30,000 bioships. Class Omega signatures. They're forming attack formations, 30,000, against 107,000. The numbers favored the defenders more than 3-1. Cortex felt a moment of hope. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could actually win. All ships, Cortex broadcast across the fleet channels. Prepare to engage. Fire at will once they enter range. May the ancestors watch over us all. The Calreth came forward. They didn't hesitate. Didn't slow. They simply advanced, their formation perfect and terrible. The galactic fleet opened fire. The void filled with light. Plasma beams lanced across the darkness. Missiles streaked toward targets. Kinetic rounds accelerated to relativistic speeds. It was beautiful and horrifying. The sheer volume of firepower was beyond comprehension. Calreth bioships exploded. Torn apart by concentrated fire. Burned by plasma, shredded by kinetic impacts. Dozens died in the first seconds. Then hundreds. We're hitting them, the tactical officer shouted. Confirmed kills. They're taking heavy damage. Cortex allowed himself a tight smile. Maybe the Calreth weren't invincible after all. Maybe numbers and firepower were enough. Maybe the Calreth returned fire. Their weapons were biological nightmares. Some ships vomited streams of acid that ate through shields and armor like they didn't exist. Others released clouds of spores that attached to hulls and began growing, spreading across ships like cancer. Still others fired what looked like organic missiles, creatures that sought out targets and burrowed into them, spreading infection from within. A Corthan defense sphere on the fleet's left flank took a direct hit from an acid stream. Its shields failed in seconds. The acid covered the hull. Within minutes, the entire sphere was dissolving, its metal superstructure turning to liquid. 3,000 crew members died screaming. A Manaxian carrier launched its fighters. Hundreds of small craft swarmed toward the Calreth line. They were fast, maneuverable, deadly. Then a Calreth bioship released a spore cloud directly into their path. The fighters flew through it. Within seconds, the pilots began convulsing. The spores had entered their life support systems. The fighters tumbled out of formation, crashing into each other, spiraling into the void. More bioships exploded, but more kept coming. And the ones that took damage began to regenerate. Wounded flesh sealed itself. Damaged organs regrew. The Calreth bioships healed almost as fast as they could be hurt. They're regenerating, the tactical officer reported. We're destroying them, but they're healing. And they're still advancing. Cortex watched the tactical display. His fleet was killing Calreth ships. Hundreds of them. But it wasn't enough. For every bioship destroyed, 2 more pushed forward. And the galactic fleet was taking terrible losses. Concentrate fire, Cortex ordered. Focus on one ship at a time. Destroy them completely before they can regenerate. The fleet adjusted its tactics. Instead of spreading fire across the entire Calreth line, they focused on individual targets. It worked better. Bioships that took concentrated fire were obliterated before they could heal, but the Calreth adapted. They began moving in tighter formations, covering each other. Wounded ships retreated while healthy ones advanced. They fought with intelligence, with purpose. This wasn't a mindless swarm. This was a coordinated military force. 3 hours into the battle, Cortex ran the numbers. His fleet had lost 40,000 ships. 40,000? The Calreth had lost maybe 12,000, and the remaining bioships showed no signs of stopping. "Marshal," his communication officer said quietly, "we're receiving retreat requests. Multiple species are asking permission to withdraw." Cortex felt cold. If the fleet broke now, it was over. The Calreth would roll through the galaxy unopposed. "Denied," he said firmly. "All ships hold position. We cannot fall back. We cannot—" An explosion rocked the unbreakable dawn. The bridge lights flickered. Damage reports flooded in. "Direct hit," the tactical officer reported. "Starboard shields down. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Casualties reported." More ships were breaking formation. Not entire species, just individual vessels whose captains decided survival was more important than victory. Cortex couldn't blame them. He wanted to run too. Commander Jiwan had been silent throughout the battle, watching her datapad. Now she looked up. "Marshal Cortex," she said calmly, "I suggest you pull your fleet back." Cortex stared at her. "Back?" "Commander, if we retreat now—" "Not retreat," Jiwan interrupted. "Reposition. Pull back to designated coordinates. All ships. You have 7 minutes. 7 minutes until what?" Jiwan checked her datapad again. "Until the Eternal arrives. And you don't want to be close when it does." Cortex wanted to argue, wanted to demand explanations. But something in Jiwan's calm certainty made him pause. The humans had sent one ship. One single ship. What could one ship possibly do that 100,000 couldn't? "How far back?" he asked. 15 million kilometers. Minimum safe distance, that was enormous. No weapon in the galaxy had that kind of range. This was insane. But Cortex had run out of options. His fleet was dying. The battle was lost. All ships, he broadcast. Withdraw to fallback coordinates. Maintain defensive formation. Execute immediately. The fleet began to pull back. The Calreth, sensing weakness, surged forward. They pressed their advantage, chasing the retreating vessels. Jiwan watched her datapad. 6 minutes, she said quietly. "Captain Minho sends his regards." Space screamed. There was no other word for it. Every sensor in the system registered the same thing. Reality was tearing itself apart at a single point. Not the normal ripple of faster-than-light travel. Something else. Something that made instruments fail and alarms shriek warnings. The KDNS Eternal emerged from whatever impossible space it had traveled through. It was massive, 3 kilometers long, angular and geometric where most warships curved for efficiency. Dark gray metal with no visible markings, no bright paint, no decorative elements. It looked like someone had built a ship for the single purpose of violence and stripped away anything that didn't serve that goal. Every threat detection system on every ship in the system maxed out instantly, not because the Eternal was doing anything threatening, simply because it existed. Its presence registered on sensors the way a shark registers in the primitive brain of prey. On the bridge of the unbreakable dawn, alarms blared. The tactical officer fought with his controls. "Marshal, I don't understand these readings. The human ship, it's—" He stopped, swallowed. "Sir, our threat assessment system is telling me to run. Just run, it won't stop saying it." Cortex stared at the tactical display. The Eternal sat in space like a predator that had just woken up. He understood what his officer meant. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to put as much distance between himself and that ship as possible. A transmission broadcast on all frequencies, a man's voice speaking perfect galactic standard with a slight accent. Calm, professional. The voice of someone who had done this before. "This is Captain Minho of the KDNS Eternal. Human Defense Fleet. All Allied vessels withdraw to minimum safe distance. Coordinates transmitting now. You have 4 minutes. Cortex opened a channel. Captain Minho, this is Fleet Marshal Cortex. 4 minutes for what? The Calreth are breaking through our lines. We don't have time for— Marshal. Minho's voice remained calm. I'm not asking. I'm informing. Withdraw your forces or they will be caught in the effect. You now have 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Something in that tone made Cortex's decision for him. He had already pulled the fleet back 15 million kilometers. What was a bit more? All ships, he ordered. Continue withdrawal. Emergency speed. Move now. The Galactic fleet, what remained of it, pushed their engines to maximum. 70,000 ships fleeing from a battlefield they were losing anyway. The Calreth saw the retreat and surged forward, their bioships pulsing with what might have been excitement. This was it. The final collapse of galactic resistance. After this, nothing would stop them. 37,000 Calreth bioships, swollen with absorbed matter from destroyed vessels, advanced on the lone human warship. The Eternal did not retreat. Did not fire. It simply hung in space, waiting. On the Eternal's bridge, Captain Minho sat in the command chair. His crew of 43 worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. No panic, no drama. Just professionals doing their jobs. First Officer Hyerin stood beside his chair. She was young, in her 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. All enemy vessels have committed to attack vectors, she reported. They're converging on our position. Estimate contact in 90 seconds. Weapons status, Minho asked. Weapons Officer Tajin checked his displays. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, barely 25. His hands moved across controls with absolute confidence. Primary system charged. Secondary system standing by. Target package loaded. All safety protocols disabled. Engineering. Minho continued. Chief Engineer Soman's voice came through the intercom. She was somewhere deep in the ship's core, surrounded by machinery that shouldn't exist according to known physics. Containment stable. Field generators at optimal temperature. We can fire at your discretion, Captain. Minho watched the main display. The Calreth bioships were close now. He could see them clearly, grotesque organic vessels with visible organs and pulsing membranes. Weapons that grew from living flesh. They were nightmares made real. He had read the intelligence reports. Knew what these ships had done to 73 star systems. Knew about the billions dead, the worlds converted into breeding grounds, the civilizations erased from existence, Hyerin, he said quietly. Rotate the ship. Dorsal surface toward enemy formation. Rotating, Hyerin confirmed. The Eternal turned slowly, presenting its back toward the approaching Calreth fleet. It seemed like suicide. Turning away from an enemy was how you got killed. Panels along the Eternal's dorsal hull began to slide open. Not weapon ports, something else. Structures that looked almost like heat sinks or radiators, 20 of them evenly spaced along the ship's spine. They extended outward, locking into position with mechanical precision. The Calreth fleet was 30 seconds away, close enough to see with unaugmented vision. Their weapons were charging. Acid bombardments ready, spore clouds preparing to launch, infection missiles armed. Minho spoke one word: fire. Weapons Officer Taejun entered a 17-digit code into his console. Pressed the confirmation button. Pressed it again when the system asked if he was sure. The third confirmation was a physical key that he turned with both hands. Firing, he said. For exactly 1.4 seconds, nothing happened. Then the radiator structures along the Eternal spine began to glow. Not with heat, not with any radiation on the normal spectrum. They glowed with something else. Something that sensors struggled to classify. Something that hurt to look at, even through cameras. On the Unbreakable Dawn's bridge, 15 million kilometers away, every scientific instrument went insane. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement. Space-time itself was bending around the Eternal, warping in ways that shouldn't be possible. What is that? Cortex whispered. His tactical officer couldn't answer. Nobody could. They were seeing something new. Something unprecedented. Commander Jiwan watched her datapad. A small smile touched her lips. That, she said quietly, is humanity's answer to an unstoppable threat. The glow from the Eternal's radiators intensified. Then it released. A wave pulsed out from the ship. Silent, invisible to the naked eye, but every sensor in the system screamed as it passed. It wasn't electromagnetic radiation, wasn't plasma, wasn't any known energy weapon. It was something that affected matter itself at the quantum level. The wave moved at near light speed, expanding in a cone directly toward the Calreth fleet. The first bioships touched it and simply stopped, not disabled. Not damaged, stopped. Their organic hulls crystallized in an instant, molecules locked in place. Their pulsing membranes froze mid-pulse. Their visible organs became still. The ships continued drifting on momentum, but they were no longer alive. They were fossils. Dead things preserved perfectly in the moment of their death. The wave continued. Hundreds of Calreth ships crystallized, then thousands. The effects spread through their fleet like ice forming on water. Bioships that had been regenerating damage stopped mid-repair. Healing flesh frozen forever. Breeding carriers full of developing vessels became tombs full of stillborn nightmares. On the bridge of the Eternal, Minho watched the tactical display. The wave was working exactly as designed. Exactly as it had in the simulations. Exactly as it had on the test range 3 years ago when they'd vaporized an entire moon to see if the weapon could be controlled. 15,000 targets neutralized, Hiren reported. Remaining enemy forces breaking formation. They're attempting to scatter. Minho nodded. The Calreth were running. For the first time in their campaign of terror, they were experiencing fear. Adjust firing solution, Minho ordered. Western flank. Catch the runners. Adjusting, Tajan confirmed. His fingers moved across controls. The Eternal rotated slightly, changing the angle of its radiators. Fire, Minho said again. The second pulse was more focused. Narrower cone. Longer range. It caught the fleeing bioships on the fleet's western edge. 5,000 more ships froze instantly, their momentum carrying them forward as dead husks. 8,000 Calreth bioships remained. They were scattering in every direction now, all formation abandoned. The largest bioship, presumably the Fleet Command, broadcast a message. The first time the Calreth had ever communicated anything besides surrender demands. What? What are you? The voice was harsh, clicking, terrified. Minho opened a channel. His voice remained calm, professional. We are humanity, and this is our only warship. He paused. Let that sink in. You have 10 seconds to begin retreat. If you're still in this system after that, we will fire again, and we will keep firing until you're all dead. He started counting. 10, 9, 8. The Calreth didn't wait for 0. Warp gates tore open. The remaining bioships fled through them, vanishing into whatever dark space they'd come from. In seconds, they were gone. All of them. The largest, most dangerous military force in known history had just run away. The battlefield fell silent. 29,000 crystallized Calreth bioships drifted in the void, frozen monuments to what happened when you threatened the wrong species. Captain Minho sat in his command chair and let out a long breath. Stand down from combat stations, he ordered. Begin power down sequence for the primary system. The glow faded from the Eternal's radiators. They retracted slowly, panels closing over them. The ship looked ordinary again. Just another warship. Nothing special. 15 million kilometers away, 70,000 ships from 43 species sat in absolute silence. The silence broke like a dam bursting. Every communication channel in the fleet exploded with voices. Questions, demands, fear, awe. Ships that had been part of different alliances for centuries suddenly found themselves united in shock and confusion. Fleet Marshal Cortex sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the tactical display. 29,000 dead Calreth ships hung in space like frozen statues. His instruments still didn't know what to make of them. The bioships registered as solid matter. No life signs, no energy signatures, just dead weight drifting in the void, Marshal. His communication officer said weakly. We're receiving over 10,000 simultaneous transmission requests. Every ship in the fleet wants to talk to us, and everyone wants to know about the human ship. Cortex opened a general broadcast channel. His voice was hoarse. All vessels maintain position. Prepare damage reports. Medical teams assist wounded ships. Command staff, report to secure channels for briefing in 1 hour. He closed the channel. His eyes found Commander Jiwan. She sat at her station, calmly reviewing data on her datapad, like nothing unusual had happened. Like she hadn't just watched a single ship destroy an army. Commander, Cortex said carefully, I believe you have some explaining to do. Jiwan looked up. Her expression was neutral, professional. What would you like to know, Marshal? What was that weapon? We call it a molecular disruptor field, Jiwan replied. She spoke like she was discussing weather patterns. It generates a quantum-level effect that arrests atomic motion. Essentially, it stops molecules and atoms from moving. The target matter reaches absolute zero, not through thermal cooling but through direct manipulation of quantum states. Cortex tried to process that. His scientific knowledge was limited to basic tactical applications. You froze them? In a manner of speaking. We stopped all molecular and atomic activity within the affected area. The bioships aren't frozen in the traditional sense. They're locked. Every particle in their structure is held in place. They can't decay, can't change, can't do anything. They're effectively removed from the timeline. A chill ran down Cortex's spine. How long have you had this weapon? The technology has been operational for 7 years. The Eternal was commissioned 5 years ago. 7 years. The humans had possessed this capability for 7 years and never mentioned it. Never shared it with the Galactic Council. Never warned anyone. Why didn't you tell us? Cortex asked. His voice held anger now. 73 systems have fallen. Hundreds of billions dead. You could have helped earlier. Jiwan met his eyes. We offered. 3 months ago, Ambassador Doyen proposed a joint defense initiative. Earth would provide advanced defensive technology. The proposal was rejected by the Council. 38 species voted against it. They said humanity was too new, too inexperienced to contribute meaningfully to galactic defense. Cortex remembered that vote. He'd voted against it himself. It had seemed like political posturing by a minor species trying to increase their standing. We didn't know you had this, he said weakly. You didn't ask, Jiwan replied. No accusation in her tone. Just fact. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Science officers tried to analyze the Eternal's weapon signature. Military commanders reviewed combat footage. Political officers sent urgent messages home. Everyone wanted to know the same things. Ambassador Threll of the Voshan Collective opened a direct channel to the Eternal. His 4 hands trembled as he composed the message. Captain Minho, this is Ambassador Threll of the Galactic Council. On behalf of all civilized species, I thank you for your intervention. We have questions. Many questions. Would you consent to a formal debriefing? The response came quickly. Minho's calm voice. Ambassador, my mission was to eliminate the Calreth threat at Velis 7. That mission is complete. The Eternal is returning to Earth. Any questions should be directed to Ambassador Doyen. But Captain, surely you understand. I understand that I'm a military officer, not a diplomat. Formal discussions are above my authority. The Eternal is departing in 10 minutes. Captain Minho out, the channel closed. Threll stared at his communication panel. 10 minutes. The humans were just leaving. No ceremony. No formal victory discussions. They had saved the galaxy and were heading home like it was a routine patrol. The Eternal's engines powered up. The ship turned slowly, orienting toward Earth. Every vessel in the fleet watched it go. Some with gratitude, some with fear, all with a new understanding of what humanity was capable of. On the Eternal's bridge, First Officer Hyerin approached Captain Minho. Sir, we're receiving over 1,000 communication requests. Fleet commands, ambassadors, scientific institutions. Everyone wants to talk. Ignore them, Minho said quietly. Our orders were clear. Engage the Calreth. Protect Velis 7, return home. Nothing about giving interviews. They'll be persistent, they will. That's why Ambassador Doyen gets the nice office and the political training. Minho smiled slightly. We're soldiers, Hieran. We did our job. Now we go home. The Eternal engaged its faster-than-light drive. Space bent around it. A moment later, the ship was gone. The Galactic Fleet remained for 3 days. Medical ships treated the wounded. Engineering crews repaired damaged vessels. Salvage teams examined the frozen Calreth bioships from safe distances. Scientists in protective gear tried to take samples. Their cutting tools couldn't penetrate the crystallized matter. The frozen bioships were harder than any known material. On the unbreakable dawn, Commander Jiwan prepared to return to Earth. Fleet Marshal Cortex found her in the hangar bay, standing beside her small shuttle. Commander, he said. Before you go, one more question. Jiwan waited. How many of these weapons does Earth have? Jiwan considered the question. That's classified information, Marshal. Commander, please. The Council needs to know. For strategic planning, for our own peace of mind. Jiwan studied him, saw genuine concern, not political maneuvering. The Eternal is our prototype, she said carefully. The first ship equipped with a fully operational molecular disruptor field. We've been testing the weapon system for years. Getting it right, making it safe. Safe, Cortex repeated. That weapon is safe? Safe to use, Jiwan clarified. If we miscalculate the field parameters, the effect could cascade beyond intended boundaries. At worst-case scenario, we could freeze an entire solar system. The Eternal has 17 redundant safety systems to prevent that. We don't take this weapon lightly, Marshal. We know what it can do. Cortex felt cold. Are you building more ships like the Eternal? Ji-won met his eyes. What do you think? She boarded her shuttle. The hatch closed. A minute later, the small craft detached from the unbreakable dawn and accelerated toward the nearest warp point. Cortex watched it go. Then he returned to his ready room and composed a message to the Drenix Hegemony's Central Command. A long message, a detailed message, about humanity, about the weapon they'd revealed, about what it meant for galactic politics going forward. The Calreth weren't the only threat anymore. Across the galaxy, similar messages were being sent. Military commands reviewed tactical data. Politicians convened emergency sessions. Scientists studied the incomplete sensor readings from the Eternal's weapon. Earth had saved them, but Earth had also revealed something terrifying. They possessed technology that could stop matter itself, could freeze entire fleets with a single shot, could render any conventional defense meaningless. On Votia Station, the Galactic Council met again. Ambassador Doyen sat at the back of the chamber, same as always. But this time, when he entered the room, the chamber fell silent. Every representative watched him, some with gratitude, some with suspicion, all with respect. Ambassador Threll called the session to order. The Council recognizes significant contributions made by humanity in the defense of Velis 7. We formally thank Earth for their assistance. We also have questions regarding the technology deployed. Doyen stood, walked to the central podium, looked around at hundreds of representatives from dozens of species. What would you like to know? The questions came like a flood. Technical specifications, production capabilities, defense agreements, trade for technology. Every species wanted something: information, access, alliance. Doyen listened patiently. When the questions finally stopped, he spoke. Earth developed the molecular disruptor field technology in response to theoretical threats. We hoped we'd never need to use it. The Calreth forced our hand. We're glad we could help. Will you share this technology with the Council? Someone asked. No, Doyen said simply. This weapon is too dangerous to proliferate. Even we barely trust ourselves with it. Then how can we defend ourselves if the Calreth return? Doyen smiled slightly. If the Calreth return, call us. We'll come. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted. Some demanded technology transfer. Others questioned Earth's right to hold such power. A few called for sanctions. Doyen waited for silence. The Calreth terrified this galaxy, he said quietly. They conquered world after world, killed billions. You couldn't stop them, but we did. With one ship. Remember that. Not as a threat, as a promise. We're here, we're watching, and we'll protect this galaxy whether you like it or not. He left the podium, walked back to his seat, sat down. The council session continued for hours, but the important part was done. The message was delivered. Humanity wasn't asking for permission anymore. The galaxy changed overnight. Within days of the Battle of Velis 7, every major government sent diplomatic envoys to Earth. Trade delegations, cultural exchanges, defense ministers. They all wanted the same thing: closer ties with humanity. Some were genuine in their gratitude. Others were terrified and hiding it behind smiles. Earth's diplomatic corps, small and inexperienced compared to elder species, found themselves overwhelmed. Ambassador Doyen worked 18-hour days meeting with representatives, signing preliminary agreements, negotiating terms for everything from trade routes to defensive pacts. But the real change happened in the military sphere. The Galactic Defense Network, a loose alliance of species sharing intelligence and occasionally coordinating fleets, suddenly wanted humanity as a full partner, not a junior member, an equal. The Drenix Hegemony, whose warriors had been considered the finest in the galaxy, quietly approached Earth about joint training exercises. 3 weeks after the battle, the Calreth Dominion sent a message. Not a threat, not a demand, an offer of ceasefire. The Galactic Council convened to discuss the message. Debates raged for hours. Some species wanted to press the advantage, hunt down the Calreth, eliminate them completely. Others argued for mercy, for allowing the Calreth to retreat to their home systems. Ambassador Doyen listened to both sides. When asked for Earth's position, he spoke carefully. The Calreth are beaten. They're no longer expanding. Our intelligence suggests they've pulled back to their core territory and are fortifying defensive positions. They're afraid. So we should strike now, argued a Corthan representative, while they're weak. No, Doyen said. We should let them remember. Let them remember what happened at Velis 7. Let them remember that the galaxy can defend itself. Fear is a better deterrent than destruction. The vote was close, but the ceasefire was accepted. The Calreth would keep their existing territory, the systems they'd already conquered. But any further expansion would be met with immediate military response. And Earth made it clear, if the Calreth broke the ceasefire, the Eternal would return. The Calreth accepted these terms without negotiation. Intelligence reports over the following weeks painted an interesting picture. The Calreth weren't preparing for another invasion. They were building defensive installations, fortifying their borders. They were done conquering. They'd learned their lesson. On Earth, Captain Minho and the crew of the Eternal returned to a quiet reception. No parades. No public ceremonies. The weapon they'd used remained classified. Most people on Earth knew only that a single human warship had helped defeat some alien threat. The details were kept secret. Minho stood in a small ceremony room at Human Defense Fleet headquarters. Fleet Admiral Quan, an old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, pinned a commendation on his uniform. You did well, she said quietly. Though I'm getting complaints from every major government in the galaxy. They all want to know about the weapon. They all want access. What are you telling them? Minho asked. That it's none of their business, Quan replied. She smiled slightly. Diplomatic version, of course. Lots of words about security concerns and technological safeguards. Are we building more ships like the Eternal? Quan's expression grew serious. That's classified. Even from you, Captain. She paused. But hypothetically, if we were building more ships, they'd need experienced commanders who understand the weapon system and can use it responsibly. Hypothetically. Minho understood. The Eternal wouldn't be alone for long. What are our orders? He asked. The Eternal is being reassigned to border patrol. Long-range reconnaissance missions. Showing the flag, as the old navies used to say. We want other species to see you occasionally. To remember that you're out there. You're not a warship anymore, Captain. You're a deterrent. And if the Calreth come back, then you stop being a deterrent and return to being a warship. Quan's voice was hard. But only if they start it. We're not conquerors, Minho. We're protectors. Don't forget the difference. I won't, Admiral. The Eternal departed Earth 3 days later. Its crew had been given extended leave, but all 43 chose to return. They were a team now, a family. The ship that had changed the galaxy. They began their patrol route along the edge of known space. Not aggressive patrols, just presence. The Eternal would appear in a system, conduct sensor sweeps, exchange pleasantries with local defense forces, then move on. A reminder, a promise. Other species began seeing it occasionally. A dark gray shape against the stars, angular and predatory. Some felt safer knowing it was out there. Others felt nervous. The ship that could freeze matter itself was now humanity's guardian of the frontier. 6 months after Velis 7, the Galactic Council formally updated its historical records. The entry was simple. The Calreth Dominion conquered 73 star systems through overwhelming force and biological warfare. They seemed unstoppable. Traditional weapons and tactics proved ineffective. Combined fleet actions at Velis 7 resulted in heavy casualties, with minimal impact on Calreth advance. Situation resolved through intervention of KDNS Eternal, human warship. Utilizing classified technology. Calreth fleet neutralized. Ceasefire negotiated. Current status. Calreth remain in existing territory. No further expansion detected. Below that, in smaller text, someone had added, sometimes the greatest power doesn't come from the size of your fleet. It comes from the quality of your technology and the resolve to use it. The person who wrote that was never identified, but the quote spread throughout the galaxy. It became a saying, a lesson, a warning. 1 year after the battle, the Eternal returned to the Velis system for a memorial service. The 29,000 frozen Calreth bioships had been moved into a stable orbit around a dead moon. They formed a graveyard, a monument. Representatives from 43 species attended the ceremony. Fleet Marshal Cortix gave a speech about unity and sacrifice. Ambassador Threll spoke about hope and resilience. Others shared similar sentiments. Captain Minho was asked to speak. He declined at first, but eventually agreed. He stood at the podium on a station overlooking the frozen fleet and spoke briefly. "We didn't come here to conquer. We came to help. That's all. The galaxy was in danger and we had the means to stop it. So we did." He paused, looking at the frozen bioships. "War is terrible. This weapon we used is terrible. We hope we never have to use it again. But if we must, we will. That's not a threat. It's a promise. To everyone here, to every peaceful species in this galaxy, you're not alone. If darkness comes again, humanity will stand with you." The speech was short, simple, but it resonated. Video of it spread across hundreds of worlds. It became one of the most viewed recordings in galactic history. On Earth, in a secure facility deep underground, construction continued on 3 new ships, each similar to the Eternal, each equipped with the molecular disruptor field, each preparing for a future that might never come. Fleet Admiral Quan visited the construction site once a month. She walked through the massive shipyards, watching as crews assembled hulls and installed systems. The ships were beautiful in their deadly purpose. She hoped they'd never see combat. But she'd spent 60 years in military service. She knew better than to hope too hard. "How long until completion?" she asked the chief engineer. 2 years for the first one, 3 years for the others," Quan nodded. 4 ships total. 4 ships that could stop any conventional fleet in the galaxy. It seemed like overkill. But the galaxy was large. Threats could come from anywhere. Earth had learned to be prepared. The Eternal continued its patrol. Captain Minho sat in his command chair reviewing reports. First Officer Hiron brought him tea, a simple ritual they'd developed over the past year. The crew had settled into routine. Patrol routes, maintenance schedules, training exercises. Occasionally they'd receive a distress call. Pirates attacking a convoy, a dispute between minor powers threatening to escalate. The Eternal would arrive and suddenly everyone would become very reasonable, very cooperative. Amazing what a ship with that kind of reputation could accomplish without firing a shot. "Captain," Hiron said quietly, "I've been thinking about what Admiral Quan said, about us being a deterrent. And? It's lonely, being the thing everyone's afraid of." Minho nodded slowly. "It is, but it's necessary. Better that they fear what we can do than test what we're willing to do." "Do you think we'll have to use the weapon again?" "I hope not. But if we do, I hope we use it to protect, not to conquer. That's the difference between us and the Calreth. They use their power to destroy. We use ours to defend." Hiron smiled slightly. "That's very philosophical, Captain. I have lots of time to think out here." He sipped his tea. "How's the crew?" "Good. Morale is high. Everyone knows what we did mattered." "That helps." "It does." The Eternal moved through deep space, a lone guardian in the darkness. Behind it, the galaxy slowly recovered from the Calreth invasion. Worlds rebuilt. Populations mourned their dead. Life continued. And in the shadows of every negotiation, every political discussion, every military planning session, there was a new factor to consider. A new variable in every equation. Humanity. The species that had been dismissed as young and inexperienced. The newcomers who'd barely been part of galactic civilization for 15 years. They'd proven something at Velis 7. Proven that technology and determination could overcome any threat.